travelers. I'm here to answer the most complicated and ancient of questions that our ancestors had once proposed. People often debate about various things: Mac versus PC, Android versus Apple, PlayStation versus Xbox, politics, religion, but all of that pales in comparison to the only question ancient philosophers could never answer. Which MMORPG is better? World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy 14? You want to know?
I kind of didn't expect that he was gonna make this video. I actually don't know if Misshapen is a WoW player or an ex-WoW player or whatever, but I'm interested.
Know the answer? Can I get a drum roll, please? It's who fucking gives a shit. You know what makes me want to stick my nutsack into a blender? When people act like these are the only two games on the entire planet. Or
I guess the title should make it clear that he didn't want to just kind of, you know, single out WoW as the only, let's say, I don't like saying competition, I like saying colleague, because even though it is in fact a different game, it appeals to, you know, similar people. And now that things have kind of calmed down a little bit, I guess we can kind of sort of go back to, you know, saying that maybe, just maybe, like, if all of these MMOs are, you know, somewhat good, they're going to keep the community engaged as a whole and not just, you know, turn the community into players of this game or that game or whatever. Yeah, the Blender joke was savage.
Or you can always take it a step further and act like you can't play both of these games at the same time. If you play one, you can't play the other in any capacity. It's literally impossible. More impossible than Titania normal. I think I have a slightly different perspective on the class war here, so let me tell you a story. I don't like MMORPGs. That might shock people given how much time I put into a certain Cat Girl Paradise MMORPG, but it's true. My favorite game genre at this point is probably JRPGs. Stuff like Persona, SMT, and Nier. Not usually Final Fantasy. You know I like this stuff when I can play something from the genre, hate it, and still get rock hard at the ending because they summon a spirit bomb to defeat God. But I also like other games such as Shadow of the Colossus, Disco Elysium, Sekiro. I don't just like JRPGs. There is one little genre of game I can never get into though, and that's MMOs. You'll often hear great stories about how people don't like version 1.0 of Final Fantasy XIV because of how bad it was. Well, I got a newsflash for you. I played version 2.0 and I fucking hated it. I thought the game was garbage. Why? Because it took me forever to level. I had to do all the side quests to progress the MSQ, which rewarded me with a garbage story that any other generic JRPG could have offered me. I also had to level a second class to get my job, and once I unlocked everyone's favorite job, Scholar, I still would have had to go grind out a bunch of other cross-class skills to make things function. And I quit the game. Grind out a bunch of other cross-class skills to make things function. And I quit the...
It's actually a small lie. I did return to the game briefly and have a sword back when the game was good. Just to wipe 20 times on Titan normal, then I truly quit. Oh god.
Game. This right here is the reason why I have such a strong vendetta against everything A Realm Reborn. It is ingrained into my very being.
I don't like that
Nothing
part.
but pure spite and hatred. That should explain to you why I'm so incredibly biased against A Realm Reborn specifically. So when my friends wanted to play Final Fantasy XIV again, I didn't want to get anywhere near it, but they managed to convince me.
Does anyone know when Misshapen started playing FF14 again?
That I might like it now, when now referred to previous expansion. So I came back to the game, and lo and behold, I liked it. When people talk about changes to Final Fantasy XIV to make the game more accessible to casual players, I am literally the poster child. I am a prime example of why these changes were probably a good thing. I often hear this rampant and vapid take that Final Fantasy XIV is a bad MMO, although it's a good JRPG. And to that I say, the only reason that you think it's a bad MMO is because you have a terrible idea of what makes a good MMO. You've been conditioned after years of abuse, and Final Fantasy XIV is like rehab. You see, it doesn't take that long to level in Final Fantasy XIV anymore. You can
No.
level a single job all the way to max by playing through the campaign, probably with the English dub so you can understand all the memes instead of the JP dub that you used since the beginning. You can't relate to 99% of the Western fanbase. It can take a little while to finish the MSQ if you want to pay attention to the plot, but if you skip everything, it doesn't take that long. I would know. I've played through the plot 3 times. I'm not giving you a specific time estimate, but my conclusion is that the time it would take is astronomically shorter than the amount of time it would take to reach max level in any other MMORPG. The director, Naoki
WoW,
Yoshida,
that's true,
Jesus Christ
but I don't
himself,
know.
said that that's very intentional.
I don't know
Rather
the
than
other
just
ones.
repeating my opinion over and over again, I will give you an example. Let's say that you're a World of Warcraft player, and you want to play Final Fantasy XIV. You don't care about the JRPG story, you just want to do all the hard raiding content. So you ask someone, how hard would it be to start getting into the hardest content, which would probably be the current Savage raid tier and all of the ultimates. That's what you personally want to get out of the game, this small little slice. I'd say if you want to level manually, it's not going to take you that long, but if you boost, it will take you literally 0 hours to level and start running 3 of the ultimates. And it won't take you more than 20 to 30 hours at most to reach max level and buy a gear set to start running the current Savage tier. You will have to farm some Savage fights to gear up for the next ultimate that's coming out, which can take a varying amount of time. But if you're putting in the effort into playing your job well and learning all the mechanics, it's not going to take forever. Especially if you're someone who's willing to learn and improve and grind it out. Now this phenomenon is not really hypothetical. We've seen players come over from WoW and start running all the Savage and Ultimates, and it's great to see how easy it was for them to start getting their ass kicked. You'll end up spending the majority of your time learning the fights rather than leveling. Or by applying
That's
the
true.
transitive property, you spend the majority of your time doing the stuff that you want to do. There isn't a giant pile of chores to get in the way of the content that you want to participate in.
I made a similar mistake when I switched from FF to WoW. Like the first thing that I did when I came over was like compiled like a list of daily and or weekly things that have to be done. And I realized that if I continue to do it that way, that I'm just going to grow resentment for the game. So I never really ended up just kind of going through with it. I dropped it, and now I just do like the most basic things that expire, like I don't know, mini cat pot or jumbo cat pot or whatever, things that take like a couple of minutes to get done with. So yeah, I stopped worrying, and I'm much happier.
Even if you don't boost. Like, yeah, the MSQ is long and boring at times, but it pales in comparison to any other MMORPG. It was honestly pretty sad to see this cool and very interesting phenomenon with WoW players coming over and trying out Final Fantasy high-end raids, very unique, and many wanted to bring some Final Fantasy XIV players over to do the same in their game. You know, a little vice versa, a little Mikasa Sukasa, let's all have some fun. Only to realize that getting everyone geared up would take so much time, it was basically impossible. This right here is one of the prime examples of how Final Fantasy XIV's game design principles have shifted over the years. Everything's about accessibility, which does not just refer to the skill floor to get into the game. It also refers into
That's
the
a good
time
idea.
investment it would take to do the stuff that you want to do. Raiding is just one part of Final Fantasy XIV. You don't have to like everything else that the game has to offer. Most people just want the plot. Some people want to fish. Some people just want to play mahjong. Some people just want to waste
Who does?
away in Eureka. And some fucking dumbasses do practically everything. But here's the thing. You don't have to
I love the amount of resentment in that one single sentence.
do these things because the dev team is not holding you hostage and forcing you to. You do these things because you want to. You think leveling isn't a grind? You want a long, grindy task? Go grind some old fucking relics, baby.
I love how one of the tanks in their party group is called Pulls Everything.
You'll see a fucking grind. You think it sucks that you don't lose XP on death? Go into nerfed Eureka. It's still more hardcore than the rest of Final Fantasy XIV in terms of level difference between enemies and being unforgiving. It's also a grind. That is always my response to people who ask why the core game isn't a grind. Well, there's grindy shit to do if you want it. Well, what's that? The game is too easy? Well, there is hard gameplay content that the majority of players never clear. If you sit around and say that the game is too fucking easy and you haven't cleared the current Savage tier and all the ultimates, I think your opinion is invalid. And then if you clear the current Savage tier and all the ultimates, I still think your opinion is invalid. They have stuff for everybody to do in this game, hard or grindy. You don't have to do anything, but you can do everything. I, too, have benefited from the mass WoW exodus. I am not completely ignorant. I don't like that game, and I never will, because I don't really like MMORPGs.
I wonder how long he's played WoW. I mean, he obviously knows stuff about WoW.
Or at least the industry definition of what an MMORPG is. But you don't need the misshapen chair seal of approval to play a game and enjoy it. My opinion is completely irrelevant when it comes to your personal enjoyment. I don't need Final Fantasy XIV to demand that I waste all my time on it every day. I'll play the fuck out of it when there's stuff that I want to do. And when there isn't something that I want to do, I simply play other games that I also like on the side. Like playing some Hunt Monster Up. I'd say it's a good thing that they don't just inflate the amount of time investment in this game to keep you subbed at all times. Unless it's housing. Stay subbed, buddy. or they're going to loot your property. But you can already see the benefits of people enjoying their limited time in the game rather.
Hey, what happens to our FC house if I unsub? I'm not gonna. I'm just wondering. Like the house just like disappears.
Than dreading their mandatory time in the game. Final Fantasy XIV is only becoming one of the largest MMORPGs, and this whole change in game design is no small reason why. I might waste tons of hours in this game, but it's purely because I want to, not because I have to. Now that I'm done venting, I'm sure that this will be received very well. If all you want to do in something like Final Fantasy XIV is raid, you will be able to get through all of it eventually. It's not going to take a million hours, and then you'll have nothing else to do. That's okay. You don't have to grind out everything else. That's just not what this game is. It's totally acceptable to not remain subbed at all times because they, as in the dev team, don't want you to hate playing the game. You can absolutely get many more hours out of many other games. But
like
gameplay hours alone do not make a great game, in my opinion. I'd much rather have a game be impactful for the small amount of time that I get to play it, rather than just have a bunch of shit to do for the sake of doing it. Final Fantasy XIV is the Doki Doki Literature Club of MMORPGs. Last thing to say before someone gets my words twisted, Final Fantasy XIV took a lot of inspiration from World of Warcraft. I am not denying that. That is the absolute truth. However, Final Fantasy XIV has evolved from its roots into what it is today. Version 2.0 and version 6.0 are very different games, just like version 1.0 and 2.0 being very different. And version 6.0 is the type of game that I like to play. Because when it comes to games, it's as simple as this. Don't tell me what to do. Now let's get out there and continue to complain that there's nothing to do in Final Fantasy XIV, the only game that exists on the entire planet.
You have a month until you are no longer the leader of the guild, and hope that in time at least one member stepped into the house otherwise. So wait, for as long as people are actually entering the houses, you're fine. That is a relief. But what happens to the house? Like if an actual FC leader is not there. I'm not gonna unsub. How do you think I keep going into the house once we... Dude, you know I'm subbed. It's like, I'm not gonna have our house get demolished or whatever. I'm not quitting. No, I'm not quitting. But like, if ever I was to like take a break or something, no, I would just absolutely stay subbed. Do I have to stay subbed or do I have to keep logging in? How does that work? Well, if I'm subbed, obviously I'm gonna be logging in. But no, I am. I'm not. I'm not announcing my departure for sure. Wait, anyone who logged a day after his house was sold because he was away. Oh, feels bad, man. Matter as long as people go into the house. Oh, okay. Well, people definitely go into our house, but most people will just go to their private apartments and stuff. So yeah. As far as I know, it's not like I snoop around people's apartments to see where they hang out and whatnot. Uh,